I was sitting in my home office when my mother walked in without knocking, grabbed my computer cables, and yanked them from the wall. "You'll work in the basement now," she said. "Steven needs this room." Steven, my 47-year-old unemployed brother. That's the moment I decided to take back the $900,000 house I'd been paying for. This is my story on the Mental Grand. I was sitting in my home office when my mother walked in without knocking, her face twisted with that look I'd seen 1,000 times before, the look that said she owned everything, including me. She didn't say hello, she didn't ask how I was doing, she just marched straight to my computer setup, grabbed the power cable, and yanked it from the wall so hard the monitor nearly fell off my desk. "You'll work in the basement now," she said, her voice cold as ice. "Steven needs this room for his new consulting business." Steven, my younger brother, the golden child who'd never held a job longer than 6 months, never paid a bill on time, never contributed a single dollar to the household he'd been living in rent-free for the past 3 years. And I was about to lose my office, the one space in this house I'd paid for because Mom decided he needed it more than me. That was the moment everything changed. That was the moment I stopped being the accommodating son and became someone else entirely. My name is David Mitchell, and I'm 52 years old. For the past 15 years, I'd been running a successful financial consulting firm from my home office, the same home I'd bought with my own money, the same home I'd foolishly put in my mother's name because she convinced me it would be better for estate planning purposes. I was making close to $300,000 a year, supporting not just myself, but my mother, my brother Steven, and occasionally my sister Rebecca when she needed help between her various failed business ventures. I paid the property taxes, the utilities, the insurance, the maintenance, everything. But according to my mother, it was her house because her name was on the deed, and that meant she could do whatever she wanted, including treating me like I was a teenager who needed to be told where to sleep and work. I stood up slowly, keeping my voice calm even though rage was burning through every vein in my body. "Mom, I have a client meeting scheduled all week. I need my office set up exactly as it is. The lighting, the background, the equipment positioning, everything is calibrated for professional video calls." She waved her hand dismissively like I was talking about rearranging furniture instead of potentially destroying my livelihood. "The basement has plenty of space. Steven needs natural light for his consulting work. He's going to be meeting with very important people." I almost laughed. Steven's idea of important people was whoever would listen to his half-baked business ideas long enough for him to ask them for money. "What consulting work?" I asked, trying to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. "He doesn't have any clients. He doesn't have any credentials. He's been sitting on the couch playing video games for 3 months. Mom's face hardened. "That's because nobody believes in him the way I do. You've always been jealous of your brother, David, always trying to keep him down." That's when I realized they had no idea who they were messing with. For 15 years, I'd been the family's cash machine, the reliable one, the one who never complained when Rebecca needed $5,000 for another doomed startup or when Steven needed bail money after his DUI. I'd been so focused on being the good son that I'd let them walk all over me. But standing there, watching my mother defend the son who contributed nothing, while demanding I give up the space where I earned the money that kept all of them comfortable, something inside me snapped. Not in an explosive way, in a cold, calculated way. I'd spent my entire career helping clients protect their assets, structure their finances, and outmaneuver people trying to take advantage of them. It was time I used those same skills for myself. "Okay, Mom," I said quietly. "I'll move to the basement." The shock on her face was almost worth it. She expected a fight, an argument, maybe even for me to storm out. Instead, I just nodded and started unplugging my equipment carefully. "Really?" she said, suspicion creeping into her voice. "You're not going to throw one of your little tantrums?" Little tantrums. That's what she called it when I dared to express an opinion that differed from hers. "No tantrums," I said, coiling my cables neatly. "You're right, it's your house, your name is on the deed, and you can do whatever you want with it." She stood there for another minute, probably waiting for the other shoe to drop, but when I just kept packing my equipment without another word, she turned and left, calling out for Steven to come see his new office. I heard them upstairs, Mom gushing about how perfect the room would be for him, how professional it would look, how this was going to be the start of his real career. And down in the basement, surrounded by boxes and old furniture and the smell of mildew, I started making phone calls. The first call was to Marcus Chen, my real estate attorney and one of my oldest clients. I'd helped him structure a deal that saved him almost $2 million in taxes 5 years ago, and he'd told me repeatedly that if I ever needed anything at all, he'd be there. "Marcus," I said when he picked up, "I need your help with something personal. It's complicated and it's probably going to take some time, but I need it done quietly and I need it done right." He didn't hesitate. "Tell me what you need." I explained the situation, every detail, how I'd bought the house 15 years ago with my own money, how my mother convinced me to put it in her name for estate planning purposes, how I paid for absolutely everything since then, every single expense, and how I had documentation to prove it all. Bank statements, tax returns, receipts, everything. Marcus was quiet for a moment after I finished. Then he said, "David, I'm going to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you want your house back, or do you want to teach them a lesson?" What happened next changed everything. I thought about that question for exactly 3 seconds before I answered. "Both," I said. "I want my house back, I want compensation for every dollar I've put into it, and I want them to understand exactly what they lost." Marcus laughed, not a mean laugh, but the laugh of someone who was about to enjoy his work. "Then we're going to need to be strategic about this. First, we establish a constructive trust. You have proof you paid for the house, proof you've paid all expenses, proof you've been the beneficial owner in every way except on paper. We can argue that your mother was holding the property in trust for you, regardless of what name is on the deed. Second, we're going to calculate exactly how much money you've put into this property over 15 years. Purchase price, improvements, taxes, insurance, maintenance, everything. And third, we're going to do this so quietly that they won't know what hit them until it's too late." Over the next 2 weeks, I worked from that dingy basement without complaint. I attended my video calls with clients against a backdrop of concrete walls and exposed pipes, making self-deprecating jokes about home renovations when anyone asked about the change. Upstairs, Stephen was having the time of his life in my old office, posting photos on social media about his new executive suite and talking about all the major deals he was going to close. He had exactly 0 clients, 0 prospects, but that didn't stop him from buying an expensive desk with money borrowed from Mom, who borrowed it from the home equity loan I didn't know she had taken out against the house. That was discovery number 1, and it was a big one. When Marcus requested financial documents for the property as part of our case preparation, we found out Mom had taken out $120,000 home equity loan 6 months ago. I had no idea. She hadn't told me, hadn't asked me, just did it because her name was on the deed, and the bank didn't care who was actually paying the mortgage. "Where did the money go?" Marcus asked when we met at his office late one evening. I'd already done the research. $40,000 to Rebecca for another business startup that failed within 2 months, $30,000 to Stephen for a truck he crashed 3 months later because he was driving drunk. The rest, I shook my head. Vacations, shopping, God knows what else. Marcus leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "So not only did they take your house, they borrowed against it without your knowledge and pissed away $120,000 of equity that you built. That's going to play very well in court." Court, the word hung in the air between us. "How long will this take?" I asked. "If they contest it, could be a year, maybe more. If we can pressure them into a settlement, a few months." I thought about spending another year in that basement, being treated like a tenant in my own home, watching Stephen pretend to work while living off my money. "Let's go for the settlement," I said, "but I want them to sweat first." That's when I realized they had no idea who they were messing with, because while they thought I was beaten, accepting my place in the basement like a good little son, I was building a case that would take everything from them. Marcus filed the initial paperwork on a Friday afternoon, timing it perfectly so they'd be served Monday morning when they thought they were safe. I'll never forget that Monday. I was in the basement on a video call with a client in San Francisco when I heard the doorbell ring upstairs. Then I heard shouting. Lots of shouting. Mom's voice, shrill and panicked, Stephen's voice, confused and angry, and then footsteps thundering down the basement stairs. Mom burst into my workspace, waving papers in her face, her eyes wild. "What is this?" she shrieked, throwing the papers at me. They scattered across my desk. Legal documents. A lawsuit claiming constructive trust, demanding full ownership of the property be transferred to me, seeking compensation for all money I'd put into the house, and requesting immediate possession. "It's exactly what it looks like," I said calmly. "I'm taking back what's mine." Her face went through about 5 different colors before settling on purple. "You can't do this. This is my house. My name is on the deed." "Your name is on a piece of paper," I corrected her. "I paid for this house. I paid the down payment. I paid the mortgage. I paid every single bill for 15 years. You held the title as a trustee, whether you understood that or not, and you violated that trust. So yes, Mom, I can do this, and I am doing this." Stephen appeared behind her, looking genuinely scared for the first time in his life. "Dave, come on, man. We're family. We can work this out." I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a man in his late 40s who'd never grown up, never taken responsibility, never contributed anything meaningful to the world. A man who thought he was entitled to everything simply because Mom had always told him he was special. "You want to work it out?" I asked. "Okay. Pay me back the $300,000 I've given you over the years. Pay Mom back the $70,000 she gave you from the home equity loan. Get a job, move out, and start acting like an adult. Do that, and we'll talk." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. There was nothing he could say because we both knew he'd never pay back a penny. "That's what I thought," I said, turning back to my computer and unmuting my microphone. "Sorry about that, Robert. Where were we?" Mom and Stephen stood there for another minute before Mom finally found her voice. "You'll regret this, David. Family is everything, and you're destroying this family." I didn't turn around. I just kept talking to my client, discussing investment strategies and tax optimization, while my mother and brother stood helplessly behind me. They finally left when they realized I wasn't going to engage anymore, and that's when the real war began. Over the next month, they tried everything. Mom called every relative we had, spinning stories about how ungrateful and cruel I was being, how I was trying to throw my elderly mother out on the street. Most of them called me, angry and accusatory, until I sent them copies of all my financial records showing exactly what I'd paid for and what Mom had done with the money. The calls stopped pretty quickly after that. Rebecca flew in from Colorado, tried to play mediator, and ended up siding with me when she saw the numbers. "Jesus Christ, David," she said, sitting in my basement workspace and looking at the spreadsheets Marcus had prepared. "You've put almost $900,000 into this house over 15 years, and Mom's borrowed against it without telling you? That's—" She couldn't even finish the sentence. "That's theft," I finished for her. "That's exactly what it is." She looked at me with something like respect for the first time in years. "What do you want from them?" "I want what's mine," I said simply. "The house, compensation for my financial contribution, and for them to move out. Stephen can get a job and find his own place. Mom can move into a nice senior community. I'll even help her find one and pay the first year's rent. But this situation ends now." Rebecca nodded slowly. "They're not going to go quietly." "I know," I said. "That's why I have lawyers." What happened next changed everything. The discovery process for the lawsuit revealed things I'd never known, things that made me realize just how deep the disrespect went. Mom had been telling people for years that the house was hers, that she'd bought it, that I was living there rent-free because she was such a generous mother. She'd refinanced the mortgage twice without my knowledge, pulling out equity each time, always with some excuse about needing money for repairs or taxes that never materialized. The home equity loan wasn't the first time, it was just the biggest. In total, she'd extracted almost $200,000 from the property I'd bought and paid for. And it got worse. Stephen, it turned out, had been planning to force me out entirely. I found emails between Mom and Stephen discussing how they could legally evict me, how they could claim I was just a tenant, how they could make my life so miserable I leave on my own. The email that really got me was one Steven sent to Mom about 3 months before she kicked me out of my office. It said, and I quote, "Once we get David out of the house, we can sell it and split the money. He's been way too comfortable for way too long. Time for him to struggle like the rest of us." When Marcus showed me that email, something inside me that had been wavering, some small part of me that wondered if I was being too harsh, went completely cold. They hadn't just disrespected me, they'd been actively plotting to steal my house, sell it, and pocket the money while I ended up homeless. "This is fraud," Marcus said, tapping the email on his screen. "This is conspiracy. This is gift wrapped and handed to us on a silver platter. We're not settling, David. We're going to court and we're going to destroy them." But I was smarter than that. Revenge isn't about destruction, it's about justice. It's about making sure the punishment fits the crime and teaching a lesson that actually sticks. "No," I said, "we're still settling, but the terms just changed." Marcus looked at me like I was crazy. "David, with this evidence, we can take them for everything. Full ownership, full compensation, possibly even criminal charges for fraud. Why would you settle?" "Because," I said, "I don't want them in prison. I don't want them destroyed. I want them to understand exactly what they lost and exactly why they lost it. I want them to spend the rest of their lives knowing they had it made, they were taken care of, and they threw it all away because of greed and disrespect. I want you to stay with me until the end of this story, because what happened in that settlement negotiation is something I'll remember for the rest of my life." We met in Marcus's conference room on a Tuesday afternoon. Mom brought her lawyer, a guy named Phil Henderson, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else on earth. Steven came too, sullen and angry. Rebecca attended as a witness. Marcus had prepared a settlement offer that was, in his words, more generous than they deserved, but exactly what you want. The terms were simple. I would get full ownership of the house, transferred immediately. Mom and Steven would move out within 60 days. I would forgive all the money they'd taken from the home equity loans and refinancing, almost $200,000, in exchange for their signatures. And I would pay for Mom's first year in a senior living community, plus give Steven $20,000 in moving expenses. The catch was this. They had to sign a document acknowledging that I paid for the house, that I paid all expenses for 15 years, and that they understood they had no legal or moral claim to the property. They had to acknowledge, in writing, witnessed and notarized, that they had been living off my generosity and that they had violated that trust. Mom's lawyer read through the document, then looked at her and said, "Mrs. Mitchell, this is an extremely generous offer. You're getting at least $200,000 in forgiveness, plus living expenses and moving costs, in exchange for something that frankly isn't even yours to claim. I strongly recommend you take it." Mom's face was red. She said, "That's my house." But her voice was shaking. She knew. She'd always known. "It's not," I said quietly. "It never was. You know it, I know it, and now everyone else knows it too. You can sign this agreement and walk away with help and dignity, or we can go to court and I'll take everything and you'll get nothing. Your choice." Steven looked like he wanted to say something, but for once in his life he was smart enough to keep his mouth shut. The evidence against them was overwhelming. The emails, the financial records, the testimony from neighbors who'd heard Mom bragging about her house while I paid all the bills. They had no case and no leverage. Mom signed. Her hand was shaking as she wrote her name, and I almost felt bad for her. Almost. But then I remembered the email about getting me out so they could sell the house, and the sympathy evaporated. What happened next changed everything. They moved out 6 weeks later. Mom went to a beautiful senior community about 20 miles away, a place with activities and care and other people her age. I'd kept my promise and paid the first year. She didn't thank me. Steven took his $20,000 and moved to Nevada, where he apparently had a friend who was going to help him start yet another doomed business venture. I didn't hear from him for almost 4 months. Rebecca was the only one who stayed in regular contact. She came by the house a few weeks after they'd moved out, brought me coffee, and just sat in what used to be my office and was now my office again. "They're calling you every name in the book," she said, "telling everyone you stole the house from Mom, that you abandoned your family, that you were heartless and cruel." I shrugged. "What are you telling people?" She smiled. I'm telling them the truth, that you supported this family for 15 years, that you gave everything, and they took advantage of you until you finally said enough. Most people, when they hear the real story, they get it. Do you get it? I asked. She nodded. I do now. I'm ashamed that it took me this long, but yeah, I get it. You weren't the golden child. You weren't the favorite. You were just the reliable one, the one who'd always be there no matter what, and they mistook reliability for weakness. That's when I realized they had no idea who they were messing with, but I did. I knew exactly who I'd been, someone who confused love with being useful, who thought family meant accepting disrespect because they were blood. I wasn't that person anymore. The house felt different with them gone. Bigger somehow, quieter. I reclaimed the master bedroom that Mom had taken over years ago. I turned Stephen's room into a library. I hired contractors to finish the basement properly, turning it into a genuine home office with everything I needed. And slowly, over the course of the next few months, I started to feel something I hadn't felt in years: peace. My business thrived. Without the constant emotional drain of dealing with my family's drama, I found I had more energy, more focus, more creativity. My client list grew. I raised my rates and people paid them happily because the work I delivered was excellent. I started dating again, something I hadn't done in almost a decade because I'd been too busy playing father figure to my 47-year-old brother. I met Linda, a woman my age, who owned her own business, who had also learned the hard way about family boundaries and self-respect. We understood each other in a way I'd never experienced. About 6 months after the settlement, I got a call from Mom. She was crying. "David," she said, her voice small and broken, "I made a mistake. I should never have treated you the way I did. Stephen is back in trouble, he needs bail money, and I don't have anything left. The senior community is wonderful, but I'm lonely, and I miss my home, and I miss you, and I'm sorry." I listened to all of it without interrupting. When she finished, I said, "Mom, I forgive you, I do. But I'm not giving you money. I'm not bailing Stephen out. I'm not solving your problems anymore. You made choices, and those choices have consequences. You can visit me here if you want to rebuild our relationship, but it has to be an actual relationship, not me being your ATM machine. Those are the terms." There was a long silence. Then she said, "That's not fair. I'm your mother." And there it was, the same entitled attitude, the same assumption that blood meant I owed her everything, regardless of how she treated me. "Goodbye, Mom," I said, and I hung up. She called back 17 times. I didn't answer. She left voicemails, each one more desperate than the last, swinging between apologies and accusations. I deleted them all, without listening to most of them. Rebecca called me after Mom reached out to her. "She's really struggling, David. She's asking me for money now, and I don't have it to give her." "Then tell her no," I said simply. "Wait, I can do that?" Rebecca sounded genuinely surprised. "You can always do that," I told her. "You just have to be willing to accept that she might not like you anymore because of it. And you have to decide if being liked by someone who only values you for your money is worth more than your self-respect." There was a pause, and then Rebecca laughed. "You know what? You're absolutely right. When did you get so wise?" "When I stopped letting people walk all over me," I said. Stephen showed up at my door 8 months after the settlement. He looked terrible, thinner, older, defeated. "Dave," he said when I opened the door, "I need help." "No," I said, and started to close the door. He stuck his foot in the gap. "Please, man, just hear me out. I'm in trouble, real trouble. I owe some people money, and they're threatening me, and I have nowhere else to go." I looked at my younger brother, this man who'd spent his whole life coasting on other people's work, who'd never learned that actions have consequences because someone always bailed him out, and I felt something I never expected to feel: pity. Not the kind of pity that makes you help someone, the kind of pity you feel for someone who did this to themselves and refuses to learn from it. "Stephen," I said, "you're 47 years old. For 47 years, people have been solving your problems for you. Mom, me, Rebecca, friends, girlfriends, whoever would listen to your sob story. And every single time someone helped you, you learned that you didn't have to help yourself. Well, I'm not doing it anymore. You need to figure this out on your own." "But I'm your brother," he said, like that was supposed to mean something after everything he'd done. Yes, I agreed. You're my brother. And if you want to rebuild that relationship, if you want to actually be family instead of just being related, here's what you do. Get yourself out of this mess on your own. Get a real job, keep it for at least a year, start paying your own bills, become an actual adult. Do that and then come back and we'll talk about being brothers again. But I'm not giving you money. I'm not bailing you out. Those days are over. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Then anger flashed across his face. You know what? Screw you, David. You've always thought you were better than me. You've always been judgmental and cold, and you never really cared about this family. What happened next changed everything. Instead of getting angry, instead of arguing, I just smiled. A real, genuine smile. Because for the first time in my life, I understood something crucial. His opinion of me didn't matter, not even a little bit. Okay, Stephen, I said, if that's how you see it, that's fine. But here's what I know. I spent 15 years caring for this family financially and emotionally. I worked my ass off to provide stability and security for people who saw it as weakness. And when I finally said enough, when I finally chose myself, I was called selfish. So yeah, maybe I am selfish now. Maybe I do think I'm better than you. Or maybe I just finally learned that I deserved the same consideration I gave everyone else. I stepped back and closed the door. He stood there for a minute, I could see his shadow through the frosted glass, and then he left. I haven't heard from him since. That was almost a year ago now. I'm 53 years old, and I've never been happier or more at peace. My business is thriving. Linda and I are talking about moving in together. I have real friendships, real relationships built on mutual respect instead of financial obligation. I reconnected with cousins and friends I'd lost touch with over the years, people who appreciated me for who I was rather than what I could do for them. Mom sends me a card now on my birthday. Just a card, no requests for money, no guilt trips. I send one back. Maybe someday we'll rebuild something, but it'll be on my terms, built on respect rather than obligation. Rebecca and I talk every week. She started her own business again, a good one this time, with proper planning and realistic goals. She asked me for advice, but not for money, and I was happy to give it. She's doing well. She learned the same lesson I did. You can't help people who won't help themselves, and trying to do so only destroys you both. The house is mine, completely mine and legally mine, with my name on the deed and no one else's. I've made it into exactly what I want it to be, a home, an office, a sanctuary. Every room reflects me now, my choices, my taste, my life. Sometimes I stand in my office, the one with the big windows and natural light, the one Mom gave to Stephen to play pretend businessman, and I think about that day she ripped my cables from the wall. I think about how humiliated I felt, how small, how disrespected. And then I look around at everything I've built since then, all of it earned and protected and truly mine, and I realize that moment was a gift. It was the wake-up call I needed to stop being everyone's safety net and start being my own priority. You know what the real revenge is? It's not that I took the house back. It's not that I cut them off financially. The real revenge is that I'm genuinely happy now. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I don't lie awake at night thinking about what they did to me. I moved on. I built a life that fulfills me with people who value me, doing work that matters to me. They, on the other hand, lost everything because they couldn't appreciate what they had. Mom lost her son and her financial security because she chose favorites. Stephen lost his free ride because he never learned to be responsible. They didn't lose because I was cruel. They lost because they were greedy and disrespectful, and those qualities always catch up with you eventually. If there's a lesson in this story, it's this. Respect isn't given automatically because of blood or age or family obligation. Respect is earned through how you treat people, and it's maintained through continued good treatment. My mother and brother thought they could treat me however they wanted because I was reliable, because I always came through, because family. They learned the hard way that even the most patient person has a limit, and when you push someone past that limit, you don't get to complain about the consequences. To everyone watching this on the mental grand, especially to those of you who are in situations like I was, being taken advantage of by family, being treated like you're less important because you're the stable one, the reliable one, you don't have to accept it. You're not being selfish by demanding respect. You're not being cruel by setting boundaries. You're not destroying your family by refusing to be destroyed for their benefit. The people who truly love you will respect your boundaries. The people who truly value you will show it through their actions, not just their words. And the people who only appreciate what you can do for them, those people don't deserve your energy, your money, or your time, not even if they're blood. I didn't destroy my family. My family destroyed itself through greed and entitlement. I just refused to go down with the ship. And if you're in a similar situation, drowning in other people's problems while they criticize you for not drowning faster, I want you to know that it's okay to save yourself. It's okay to swim for shore and let them figure out their own way to land. That's not abandonment. That's survival. That's self-respect. That's choosing yourself after years of choosing everyone else. And here's the thing nobody tells you about setting boundaries and demanding respect. It gets easier. The first time you say no, it feels like you're committing a crime. The guilt is overwhelming. But the second time is a little easier. The third time, easier still. Eventually, it becomes natural. Eventually, you wonder why you ever accepted being treated that way in the first place. I'm not going to tell you that everything turned out perfect because life isn't a fairy tale. I still have complicated feelings about my mother. I still sometimes wonder if I could have handled things differently with Stephen. I still feel a small pang of guilt when Rebecca mentions that mom is struggling. But those feelings don't control me anymore. I acknowledge them, I process them, and then I remember why I made the choices I made. And every time I do that, I know I made the right call. If you've stuck with me this far through this story on the mental grand, thank you. This wasn't easy to share, but I think it's important. Too many people suffer in silence, being taken advantage of by the people who are supposed to love them most because they're afraid of being called selfish or cold or heartless. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to stop enabling their bad behavior and force them to face reality. So if you found value in this story, if it resonated with you, if it gave you permission to stand up for yourself, I want you to ask you to do 3 things. First, hit that like button. Let me know this story mattered to you. Second, leave a comment telling me your experience or just letting me know you understand. Building a community of people who support each other and setting healthy boundaries is important. And third, subscribe to The Mental Grand. This channel is dedicated to stories of justice, of people who refused to be victims, of quiet strength and intelligent resistance. We need more of that in the world. We need more stories that say it's okay to stand up for yourself, it's okay to demand respect, it's okay to choose your own well-being over toxic family dynamics. The world will tell you that family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that you should forgive and forget and keep giving chances. But the world is wrong. Family is only everything if they treat you like you're something. Blood doesn't give people permission to bleed you dry. And forgiveness doesn't mean accepting ongoing disrespect. It means releasing the anger while maintaining the boundaries. I learned that lesson the hard way, in a basement office with mildew on the walls, after my mother ripped cables from my computer because she thought I'd just accept whatever she decided. But I didn't accept it. I fought back intelligently, legally, and I won. Not just the house, not just my financial independence, I won my self-respect back. And that, more than anything else, is what makes this story worth telling. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being part of the Mental Grand community. And remember, you deserve respect, you deserve boundaries, and you deserve to be valued for who you are, not just what you can provide. Never forget that. Never accept less than that. And never, ever let anyone make you feel guilty for demanding what you deserve.